Happy Friday! Today we are going to be reading Chapter 6 of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Chapter 6 is titled, Into the Forest. I wish the Macready would hurry up and take all these people away, said Susan presently. I'm getting horribly cramped. And what a filthy smell of camphor, said Edmund. I expect that the pockets of these coats are full of it, said Susan, to keep away moths. There's something sticking into my back, said Peter. And isn't it cold? Said Susan. Now that you mention it, it is cold, said Peter. And hang on, it's wet, too. What's all the matter with this place? I'm sitting on something wet, and it's getting wetter every minute. He struggled to his feet. Let's get out, said Edmund. They've gone. Oh, said Susan suddenly, and everyone asked her what was the matter. I'm sitting against a tree, said Susan, and look, it's getting light over there. By Jove, you're right, said Peter, and look there, and there. There's trees all around, and this wet stuff is snow. I do believe we've got into Lucy's wood after all. And now there was no mistaking it, and all four children stood blinking in the daylight of winter day. Behind them there were coats hanging on pegs, and in front of them were snow-covered trees. Peter turned at once to Lucy. I apologize for not believing you, he said. I'm sorry. Will you shake hands? Of course, said Lucy, and they did. And now, said Susan, what do we do next? Do, said Peter. Well, we go and explore the wood, of course. Ugh, said Susan, stomping her foot. It's pretty cold. What if we put on one of these coats? They're not ours, said Peter doubtfully. I'm sure nobody would mind, said Susan. It isn't as if we are taking them out of the house. We shan't take them. Oh, no, there's the cord, sorry. My cat just caught the cord. I'm on pause. I'm back. So my cat River decided to crawl underneath my desk and my cord was hanging and she got it wrapped around her neck and she pulled it. So life for the cat, right? Okay, back to this. She wanted to leave the coats. It wasn't as if we were taking them out of the house, and we shouldn't take them even out of the wardrobe. I'm sure nobody would mind. I never thought of that, Sue, said Peter. Of course, now that you put it that way, I see. No one could ever say you have bagged a coat as long as you leave it in the wardrobe where you found it, and I suppose this whole country is in the wardrobe. They immediately carried out Susan's very sensible plan. The coats were rather too big for them, so that they came down to their heels, and looked more like royal robes than coats when they had put them on. But they all felt very good and a great deal warmer, and each thought they looked better in their now new get-ups and more suitable for the landscape. We can pretend we're Arctic explorers, said Lucy. This is going to be exciting, even without pretending, said Peter, and he began leading the way forward in the forest. There were heavy, darkish clouds overhead, and it looked like it might snow before night. I say, began Peter presently, oughtn't we be bearing a bit more to the left, as if we were aiming for the lamp-post? He had forgotten the moment that he must pretend to never have been in the wood before. The moment the words were out of his mouth, he realized that he had given himself away. Everyone stopped. Everyone stared. Peter whistled. So you really were here, he said. And that time that Lou said she met you here and you made out that she was telling lies? There was dead silence. Well, all of the poisonous little beasts, said Peter, and shrugged his shoulders and said no more. There seemed to be indeed no more to say, and presently the four of them resumed their journey, but Edmund was saying to himself, I'll pay you all out for this, you pack of stuck-up, self-satisfied pigs. Where are we going anyway, said Susan, chiefly for the sake of changing the subject. I think Lou ought to be the leader, said Peter. Goodness, she knows she deserves it. Where will you take us, Lou? Well, what about going to see Mr. Tumnus, said Lucy. He's the nice fawn I told you about. Everyone agreed to this, and off they went, walking briskly and stamping their feet. Lucy proved to be a good leader. At first she wondered whether she was able to find the way, but she recognized the odd-looking tree on one place and then the stump on the other, and brought them to where the ground became uneven, into the little valley, and at last to the very door of Mr. Tumnus's cave. But there was a terrible surprise that awaited them. The door had been wrenched off its hinges and broken into bits. Inside, the cave was dark and cold, and had a damp feel, and the smell of the place had not been lived in for several days. Snow had drifted in from the doorway and heaped on the floor, mixed with some black, which turned out to be charred sticks and ashes from the fire. Someone had apparently flung it about the room and then stamped it out. The crockery lay smashed on the floor, and the picture of the fawn's father had been slashed into shreds with a knife. This was a pretty good washout, said Edmund. Not much good coming here. They have the picture of the cave. We're going to talk about that knife there in a moment, I believe. What's this? this?" said Peter, stooping down. He had just noticed a piece of paper which had been nailed to the carpet floor. "Is there anything written on it?" said Susan. "Yes, I think there is," said Peter. "But I can't read it in this light. Let's go out to the open air." They all went out into daylight and crowded around Peter as he read the following words. "The former occupant of this premises, the Faun Tumnus, is under arrest and awaiting his trial on charge of high treason against the Imperial Majesty Jadis, the Queen of Narnia, Chanteline of Cair Paravel, Empress of the Lone Islands, etc. Also of comforting her said Majesty's enemies, harboring spies, and fraternizing with humans. Signed, Morgrim, Captain of the Secret Police. Long live the Queen." The children stared at each other. "I don't know that I'm going to like this place after all," said Susan. "Who is this Queen, Lou?" said Peter. "Do you know anything about her?" "She isn't a real queen at all," said Lucy. "She's a horrible witch, the White Witch. Everyone, all in the wood, the people hate her. She has made an enchantment over this whole country so it's always winter here and never Christmas." "I wonder if there's any point in going on," said Susan. "I mean, it doesn't seem particularly safe here, and it looks like we won't have much fun either. And it's getting colder every minute, and we brought nothing to eat. What about just going home?" "Oh, but we can't, said Lucy suddenly. "Don't you see? We can't just go home, not after this. It's all on my account that the poor fawn has gotten into trouble. He hid me from the witch and showed me the way back. That's what it means by comforting the Queen's enemies and fraternizing with humans. We simply must try to rescue him." "A lot we could do," said Edmund. "We haven't got anything to eat." "Shut up, you," said Peter, who was still very angry with Edmund. "What do you think, Susan?" "I've had a horrid feeling that Lucy is right," she said. "I don't want to go a step further, and I wish we'd never come, but I think we must try to do something for Mr. whatever his name is. I mean, the fawn." "That's what I feel too," said Peter. "I'm worried about having no food with us. I vote we go back and getting something from the larder, only there doesn't seem to be any certainty of getting back in this country again once you've got out of it. I think we'll just have to try to go on." "So do I," said both the girls. "If only we knew where the poor chap was imprisoned," said Peter. They were all still wondering what to do next when Lucy said, "Look, there's a robin with such a red breast. It's the first bird I've seen here. I say, I wonder if birds can talk in Narnia. It almost looks as if it wanted to say something to us." Then she turned to the robin and said, "Please, can you tell us where Tumnus and the fawn have been taken to?" As she said this, she took a step forward towards the bird, and at once flew away, only as far as the next tree. There it perched and looked at them very hard, as if it understood all they had been saying, almost without noticing that they had done so. The four children went with a step or two nearer, and at this time the robin flew away again to the next tree, and once more it looked at them very hard. You couldn't have found a robin with a redder chest or a brighter eye. "Do you know," said Lucy, I really believe he means for us to follow him." "I have an idea he does," says Susan. "What do you think, Peter?" "Well, we might as well try it," answered Peter. The robin appeared to understand the matter thoroughly and kept going from tree to tree, always a few yards ahead of them, but never so near that they could easily follow it. This way it led them on, slightly downhill. Wherever the robin was alighted, a little shower of snow would fall off the branch. Presently the clouds parted overhead, and the winter sun came out, and the snow all around them grew dazzling bright. They had been traveling in this way for about a half an hour with the two girls in front when Edmund said to Peter, "If you're not still too high and mighty to talk to me, I'd something to say that you better listen to." "What is it?" asked Peter. "Hush, not so loud," said Edmund. "There's no good frightening the girls, but you realize what we're doing?" "What?" said Peter, lowering his voice to a whisper. "We're following a guide we know nothing about. How do we know which side the bird is on? Why shouldn't it be leading it into a trap?" "That's a nasty idea. Still, a robin, you know. They're good birds in all the stories I've ever read." "Well, I'm sure a robin wouldn't be on the wrong side." "If it comes to that, which is the right side? How do we know that the fawns are on the right side and the Queen? Yes, I know we've been told she's a witch, but is she really in the wrong? We don't really know anything about her." "The fawn saved Lucy." "He said he did, but how do we know? And there's another thing, too. Has anyone the least idea of how to get home from here?" "Great Scott," said Peter. "I hadn't thought of that." "And no chance of dinner, either," said Edmund. And there's a picture of the robin. And that is the end of Chapter 6. These chapters are a lot smaller than the other chapters. So, all right, Chapter 6. Chapter 7 is titled A Day with the Beavers. I don't know why I said that with an accent, but A Day with the Beavers is going to be next. Tune in tomorrow for Chapter 7. Yeah, love and support you. Have a great weekend.